Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and this week's War Within beta build, we saw a ton of new class adjustments, which primarily are going to be focusing on tuning, with the pre-patch launching very soon and the expansion fast approaching. Now's a pretty good time for us to start seeing classes getting adjusted, but they're trying to bring some of the juggernauts such as survival hunters and mages down a notch while trying to amp up everybody else. But out of all the classes that we've seen perform really well in the beta, the class of Death Knight in particular isn't even getting nerfed. In fact, they're seeing additional buffs in order to help improve on the hero talent combinations from the Rider of the Apocalypse as well as the Deathbringer for the spec of Frost, which gave me an excuse to hop back on the class of Death Knight, test out some of the best builds available over on the beta, and then I also want to go over how these hero talent changes are going to affect each and individual one of these two specs. Spoilers, it's looking very good for the class of Death Knight going forward. As always, if you guys want to see more regular class updates like these for the War Within beta, be sure to follow the channel. Otherwise, let's dive right in. So a huge swath of this update is going to primarily cover the Death Knight hero talents, which are all have received some form of a buff or another, which is a good thing for Death Knights in general. I was expecting for them to get some kind of nerfs, especially with just how good Unholy Death Knights have been doing, and recently they took a bit of a nerf last week as well, just to the base kit, though it doesn't really look like it's going to be stopping them. So we are seeing improvements for the most part. Just a quick note of general adjustments though, we did see a lot of class self-healing and self-survivability get affected in one way or another, some in bigger ways than others, some in smaller ways. For Death Knights, they also got affected, though through a way that I would have never expected. Fallen Crusader, the Rune of Fallen Crusader, has an effect where you engrave your weapon with a rune that has a chance to proc, which heals you for a portion of your health and grants you strength. The heal of the Rune of the Fallen Crusader has been nerfed from a 6% to a 4%. Now, but the fact that every class has gotten some kind of a heal nerfed and some got a lot of their aspects of healing nerfed, for Death Knights, I guess it's not completely a negligible amount of healing. It isn't the highest. Absorbs and even Death Strikes, like a carefully timed Death Strike, can help top you up, at least in PvE content, but yeah, I guess Death Knights did get nerfed even a little bit this week, and that's the way that they got nerfed in terms of self-healing, which is a very funny way in my opinion. For the hero spec of Deathbringer, it found itself with quite a bit of popularity with the specs of Blood, Death Knight, but hasn't found nearly the same popularity on the spec of Frost, and I think it's mostly because of just how good a Rider of the Apocalypse is. Not only does the Rider summon up a bunch of different riders with various gameplay alterations that it offers you, which are all fun to play into, you also have a bit more control with Apocalypse now, where you can summon all 4 riders guaranteed as both Frost and Unholy Death Knight. But also it solves a lot of the mobility issues of just the existence of a Death Knight. It's just lack of movement, and the death charge ability fixes all of that in a single talent. But Deathbringer still, I think, is a very solid option that has a lot of potential for quite a bit of damage. So out of all the different changes that we have here, the Deathbringer ability for the most part is going to be a buff that you, or a debuff rather, that you put up on a target, and as you deal shadow or frost damage to an enemy, or even shadow frost potentially, you add stacks of that Reaper's Mark, and after 12 seconds, or whenever the ability reaches 40 stacks, it explodes, doing a bunch of damage per stack of the ability. And it procs you the ability of Exterminate, allowing you to pull out 2 scythes, one a single target scythe and another swooping cleaving scythe on your next Obliterate. Now, the Exterminate damage of the first scythe has been buffed by 25%, and the Exterminate second scythe has been buffed by 20%. So it's a bit of single target and a little bit of AoE, which is a noticeable change when it comes to testing it in dungeons. Soul Rupture, which is like an AoE component of this ability, when Reaper's Mark explodes, it deals 30% of its damage to all nearby enemies, which is the AoE way for you to be able to build up the single target ability, which then can deal quite a bit of damage, especially if you land a crit. And if this ability does end up cleaving everybody, it can be quite a bit of damage, especially in some of the bigger group AoE situations. The Reaper's Mark melee ability damage, not the stack debuff, has also been increased by 88%, and this is the viciously slice into the soul of your target, dealing Shadow Frost damage and applying Reaper's Mark effect. That Shadow Frost damage, that part, the melee element of it, that has been buffed by 88%, which is, I mean, it's a number, I guess. Another talent that got buffed up is Wave of Souls. Essentially, when you apply Reaper's Mark on the enemy, it sends forth a burst of Shadowfrost energy and then sends it right back, doing Shadowfrost damage both ways to all enemies in its path. Wave of Souls critical strikes cause enemies to take 5% increased Shadowfrost damage, stack it up to 2 times, and the wave is always a critical strike on the way back, which simply just buffs up all of your damage, and if you have high enough crit chance, you can get a wave crit there and back, which increases the crit damage that the enemies take by 10%. All in all though, playing around with Deathbringer, I don't hate this talent. In fact, I actually like it quite a lot, and I liked it ever since they added it, but I already could tell from the get-go that it's not going to get nearly as much play as Rider. Just Rider, thematically, utility-wise, mobility-wise, it does so much to the Death Knight, and I feel like the Riders themselves also do add you just additional gameplay that doesn't necessarily add too many things for a Frost Death Knight to manage. Deathbringer is a little bit more nuanced like that, but there's one component in particular that I really dislike about Deathbringer, is the fact that Reaper's Mark is a minute cooldown, because Death Knights are not really a minute cooldown anymore. You do end up playing Pillar of Frost with cooldown reduction added. With Ice Caps, you are a 45-second class, playing around a 45-second window that lines up with Froststrom's Fury, which feels much better in dungeons, and I'd say even in raids. It just gives you a slightly faster profile where you could delay the cooldowns a little bit later for a very specific window to line it up with every minute, but I like this profile a little bit better. But having this ability on a minute cooldown is kind of awkward, because it's something I think you will end up using on cooldown as soon as it's available. But if it was just 45 seconds, I feel like you could synergize it with the rest of your kit so much easily. You can play around with Swift End as a talent, which allows you to reduce the cost of your Reaper's Mark, but also reduce the cooldown to 30 seconds. However, the other option, which is Painful Death, buffs the damage of the ability and gives you 2 chances for Exterminate. Exterminate as a talent also is another big one, where I noticed a Deathbringer with Exterminate, if it procs correctly, it could feel very good and big value of a buff. So you see Exterminate Scythe abilities have a chance to reapply the Reaper's Mark ability back on the target for free. This allows you to either chain that same mark on the primary target, or chain it from one target to the next, maybe from one trash bag into another. Now, with the talent of your Swift End, you get a shorter cooldown, but a 20% chance to reapply. With Painful Death, you get 2 Exterminate procs, all of which have a 30% chance to reapply Reaper's Mark on the target, and Reaper's Mark deals additional damage. And right now, Death Knights are having to play around the gamble build, where you have to gamble Painful Death in order to get more resets and more free procs of Reaper's Mark on target for this ability to really feel all that good. So you see what I mean? Like, it's just, oh man, if this was only a 45-second cooldown, or maybe if this talent lighted up by, I don't know, 15 seconds instead of 30 seconds, and maybe remove the cost of the ability completely, or even made it off GCD, even like something like that would feel really good to line up into your burst combo, just kind of like swing it in between over your entire rotation. I think that would feel nice. Just having it be something that can synergize with the rest of your kit a little bit better would be nice. But right now I feel like a lot of power from Reaper's Mark comes from those resets, so I wonder if that's something that can maybe do with Painful Death, like give it at least a 1 guaranteed chance to reset, and then you can just keep rolling into more buffs potentially. I don't really know. Or maybe I guess what they could do is just buff the damage of this ability. But Deathbringer on its own, I feel like is just it's a good hero talent. I feel like it's just not as good as Ride of the Apocalypse, because this solves your mobility issue. This gives you a bit extra cleave as a Frost Death Knight, so you're not starving on death and decays, with more grain proccing fairly regularly. Deathbringer is fine. I think it just right now has a bit of a desync, and the damage profile isn't just that great for Frost, or maybe nobody just really found a build to synergize with Deathbringer super well. But I've been playing around both of them. Deathbringer I feel like may need a few more buffs before it's going to be a popular choice, but I feel like there's so many different little ways that they could make it a little bit more synergetic with a Frost Death Knight kit. But you guys can let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts on the Deathbringer? The other hero talent that got brought up by quite a bit is Ride of the Apocalypse, and I thought honestly that we wouldn't see Rider getting any kind of buffs, but it actually continued to get buffs as of this week, primarily with some of the elements that he can interact with Unholy Death Knight. So as part of the Rider, you have a chance when you use abilities abilities to randomly summon one of the different riders. Morgraine, Whitemane, Trollbane, Nazgrim. Each of the riders has a unique ability behind them. Whitemane's Death Coil cast frequency has been increased, and there's just her basic ability that she does when she's out and about attacking when she's called forth. But also the Undeath ability cast frequency has also been increased. Undeath is a dot that Whitemane puts up that does Shadow Frost damage every 3 seconds over 24 seconds. And each time Undeath deals damage, it gains a stack. And you can actually modify the ability with Whitemane, where whenever you use abilities such as Scourge Strike or Obliterate as a Frost Death Knight, you add an extra stack for Undeath. So basically when Whitemane is out, she marks a target with a dot. You want to focus down the target as best as you can with your Scourge Strike or Obliterate to get the most value out of your dot, and the frequency for both her attacks and Undeath has been increased, making her even better. Another rider that's got buffed up is Trollbane, and Trollbane's effect is a chain of ice that he puts on targets, which reduces the movement speed, but also causes them to take 5% additional damage for 8 seconds while chain of ice is active. You can further amplify Trollbane's with Icy Fury to give you this AoE cleave component, where enemies affected by Chain of Ice, whenever you deal damage to those targets, you will deal Shadow Frost damage to all nearby foes, while also slowing them for 40% with the ability having an 8 target soft cap. And this AoE effect in AoE content is massive. It is powerful. It is awesome. This one did end up snagging a 8 target soft cap because it apparently didn't have a 8 target cap whatsoever, but now it correctly deals Shadow Frost damage, which allows it to scale both Frost Death Knight and Unholy Death Knight a lot better, and it's a very good choice in Mythic Pluses. It does give you a target that you'll need to watch out for, like whenever Trollbane is out, you want to make sure you focus the target he hits with a Chain of Ice. But when he does come out, it is a ton of overall output, and I feel like every Unholy Death Knight and every Frost Death Knight is now perma-locked right at the Apocalypse and Mythic Pluses just for this ability alone, because it carries the entire hero talents, hero spec setup in Mythic Pluses bare minimum. For Unholy, however, they did add additional effects that make Unholy even better as a Rider of the Apocalypse. And we've seen a lot of Death Knights go in Sin Land as Unholy recently, because Sin Land picked up quite a bit of that disease damage value, but it looks like Rider is back up on the menu for certain. Undeath damage from Whitemane now scales with Unholy Death Knight's Mastery. Your Mastery reads, for the most part, it increases the damage of your minions and shadow damage abilities by a certain amount based on your Mastery value. So that now has a direct buff from your Mastery resource. Trollbane's Icy Fury also now correctly scales with Unholy Death Knight's Mastery, since it is Shadow Frost damage that you'll be able to deal. It has this element of Shadow, and that also scales properly, which is really, really good too. So that's a really strong with this set of a combo. And trying this out in dungeons, I can see why every Death Knight is Unholy right now, and why every Death Knight is riding around as a Rider of the Apocalypse. And it's very strong. It feels like it's a very passive playstyle, because to a degree it is. It's not super, I guess, disruptive when it comes to your rotation. It's a little bit more, you just have to make sure you're targeting the right target, either for the Undeath debuff or the Trollbane's Icy Fury debuff. But overall, it's a very powerful choice. And if you haven't tried Death Knights at all, once you unlock Rider of the Apocalypse, either in the beta or whenever the expansion launches, if this continues to stay as it is right now, however, because this could change in the future, definitely give this one a solid shot. It's insanely strong, and it's insanely fun to play around with. As for the playstyle of Frost as well as Unholy over in the beta right now, both specs feel very good. I did have a bit of a rough time trying to really make Deathbringer work, because like I said before, the desyncing of cooldowns with it being a minute profile while you're a 45-second profile feels a little bit weird, and I wish they did something about it. Going for a shorter cooldown on your actual Reaper's Mark ability can work, but it looks like you kind of want to play around the RNG of getting that double Exterminate Cleave to reapply your dots. But for the most part, it does feel good, and you can definitely make a build. Just right now, it is very difficult to not play Rider of the Apocalypse, because the Rider of the Apocalypse Whitemane Death Coil damage and the Undeath frequency, as well as Trollbane frequency and the Shadow Frost damage, all of that stuff was is functional for both Frost as well as Unholy. that you're seeing a number of Death Knights playing around with Ride of the Apocalypse because it does so much good for either one of the playstyles. It offers you plenty of buffs that can be easily integrated in your gameplay. These buffs are very easy to control, and the mobility amps that it provides are absolutely a huge quality of life improvement. So there's just so many different reasons why everybody's playing Ride of the Apocalypse, and you really do feel its power as a Frost or Unholy Death Knight. Either way, Death Knights as a melee class are performing incredibly well as of this week's build, and I'm hoping that they retain some of that power going forward into the actual release of the expansion, because out of all the melee, this one is extremely fun to revisit again and again. And I definitely feel like every time I talk about it, I can never stop saying only the best about this class, but it's actually just incredibly fun to pick up every single time. Now, with that being said, honestly, who cares what I think about the Death Knights? I want to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you think about the Unholy, as well as the Frost changes to the hero talents? And also, what are your thoughts on the hero talents that you were thinking of picking up going forward if you do plan to play a Death Knight? Are you just a rider of the apocalypse, literally a ride or die? That's it, you're locked in, and it seems like everybody else is locked in, rider of the apocalypse? Or are you willing to give like Deathbringer, Frost Death Knight a proper shot, or a Sylvain, a Holy Death Knight a proper shot? Let me know what are your thoughts on the hero talents, and what other buffs would you want to see to make you want to play the non-rider of the apocalypse hero talents in the comments down below. As per usual, if you guys enjoyed this video or found it informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. And as always, in the description of every single video and live stream, we have a link to our Discord community channel. Probably the best place to reach out to me directly in case you want to let me know what you thought about this video, or hang out with the rest of the community to discuss some of the upcoming changes. Join our Discord to become part of the community. But otherwise, thank you all so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.